and welcome to Hedgehog Hollow. Today I have a very special video to celebrate the start of my guest designer series with Whimsy Stamps. We're going to be using the Can You Beleaf It stamp set. I love this snail so much, and there are so many techniques in this card. I'm going to show you how to colour in the image with Copics. We're going to use glossy accents on the shell, and we're going to use a snow marker to create these lumpy bumpy pieces on the mushroom. We also have some droplets of rain on the leaf, and I'm going to show you how to create this stormy sky with realistic rain falling down as well. We're going to show you how to create pen flicks that look like grass in the bottom, and these mask hillsides as well. So many techniques to show you, so let's get started. So first of all, I'm using this gorgeous Whimsy Can You Beleaf stamp. I think it's so pretty. I'm going to stamp it out using My Favourite Things hybrid pad. It's a rubber stamp, so I'm going to take out my foam and Teflon mat. You could leave your Teflon mat in, it wouldn't cause you any issues at all. But make sure you are on the rubber side, or if you're in the MISTI, take your foam piece out. You can use your magnets. You saw mine stuck together there. So make sure you slide them apart if that happens to you. Now I'm going to stamp this out a couple of times. The MFT hybrid is perfect for working with Copics, and I'm using some Nina Solar White to colour onto. I always stamp at least twice with black ink, something about it. I've tried all sorts of different ones. I always just like how it looks that second time out. And I keep my Teflon mat and foam in there just so that it doesn't get lost. And so you can see me just cleaning off my stamp ready to put it away again as well. So I'm going to be using a selection of Copics. I'm actually, rather than as we go along, I won't list them out for you, but I will try and put them there like I've done just there, and I will list them all in the description and in the blog post for you, so check out those links below. I always start with my lightest shade, and with leaves I tend to work in flicks because I think they blend together better. I like the 3 shades here on the leaf, so you see I flick from the inside out, and then I go in and add highlights for that darker colour. We've got lots of macro shots because there's so many different fun things in this card, and they'll be all at the end of the video, and of course on the blog for you to pin as well. Always, if you want to reblend, I go back in with that lighter blending colour there as well. I'm trying to show you the colours of Copics as I go along, but as I say, I'll give you a good list as well. So for the snail shell, I worked in dots, and when you see the pictures at the end, it comes out so well. I was so pleased with it. It's not a technique I've ever used before. I saw it on a tortoise shell once, and it's been one of those, I must try that, and I did it today. Love how it came out. So I'm using some warm greys for his shell. I'm going to work in those stipples, sort of working outwards, and then I just blend it in that spiral as well. Now, one thing I did notice is I forgot the stalk of the leaf. You'll see that in the photos at the end. I only actually noticed when I was editing in those photos, but these things happen. I'm actually going to go and touch it in on the actual card, but it won't show on this one, of course. Now, I did start by doing these raindrops. I changed my mind later on and cut the image out so that I could pop it up on foam. But if you want to include those raindrops as I was doing there, you can use those same shades of blue. I will use those again later on for the actual raindrops, but you can either do it as they are on there, or you can cut it out as I did as well. Now, when you're colouring in the snail, I started with my lightest warm grey, and then I went to my mid-tone, and then I went to my darkest tone. And I followed the rules that I gave you before, which is wherever there is a V is where you add dark colour, and you add less and less of it until you're completed, and then you go back with your lighter shade to blend it all together. And I think that actually came out really well in the end as well. So I did have some bleeding issues. It's a long time since I've worked with Copics, but I just went with the flow. I did try and use my colourless blender to get rid of some of those things as well. But these things happen, and actually I'm so pleased with this card. It's definitely one of my favourites. It's going on the shelf for a very long time. I'm not sure if I could ever bear to part with it. Now, the toadstool or mushroom I'm going to do in lots of shades of red. I started off with a really fine one just to really saturate the cardstock to give me some great blends. Then I have only a couple of chows left, but this is one of them. I think it's an R20, and I decided to use that as my base colour, and then I have 2 other shades of red, which I'm going to go inwards. Now, I started trying to avoid those circles, and then I realised that it just really wasn't that easy, and I could touch them in later with a white marker. Again, I'm working around the edges, I'm working around the bottom of that snail, and I'm working into those V's with all those shades, and I want to leave a little bit in the middle to make it look like it's a nice rounded piece. Now, I am entirely self-taught with Copics. I have never been on a class or anything like that, and I'm really looking forward to going on my first Copic class in October, so I'm hoping I will learn a lot, but I'm quite pleased with how this one came out. I think on the whole he came out really, really pretty. So you can see that I worked on the top of the toadstool with all of those shades, and I do tend to have 2 pens in my hand when I get towards the end just to keep blending in those places. Then the bottom of the toadstool, you'll see I'll get to in just a second as well. I started again with the lighter shade, and I worked from the inside, so where the stalk would be, outwards, and then I worked from where the outer toadstool would be back into the stalk. So I just worked in those 2 directions, flicking different colours in and out, using that brush tip to really to my advantage to make life easy. Now you want to work out where your shadows will be. I decided that they're mainly going to be on that underside, and then it's going to get lighter towards the centre. Now the middle part of the toadstool, I decided to go back and work with some browns and some of those warmer greys again. And I had to go and have a choose of which colours I exactly wanted. I'd forgotten to pick up some browns, so I grabbed 3 different shades, but I also decided to just use that really light warm brown shade, warm grey shade I should say, in the centre for my light shade. And then I worked again around and around, getting a smaller and smaller area. So when there's no V's, you just have to kind of think, how would those shadows look? If you have something round, you're going to want to leave some light patches so that it still has that 3D effect. Now you may not want it to look like that. Some people want that kind of animated, cartoony effect. But you can see there how he came out, and I think he's super cute. So I ended up cutting him out with the Scan and Cut, and he came out really, really well. Now for those little white bits on the mushroom, I was starting off with the Kiriana white pen, and it was going really well. They're sparkly, a little bit of shimmer, that they just lacked a little bit of punch, and I thought, well, I'll add a couple of layers, and you'll see what I ended up doing in just a moment. But I then started on my scenery whilst that was drying. I cut out some clouds from Honeybee, and I cut out the Hills stitch dies from Lawn Fawn. I'm going to be using a couple of colours of green distress inks. You could interchange Oxides and regular distress inks, and then I'm going to brush them backwards and forwards. So I'm starting with the hill. You'll see that I married up the corner of the hill with the corner of my cardstock, and that's so that I get these really cute nested hills, so I can keep moving them up. So now I'm moving that edge onto the right hand side, and then I get my next hill, and so I will move backwards and forwards so that I then have this really kind of cute effect of the rolling hillsides in the background. So I did 3 of those, and then I did a central one just to try and tie it all together. These masks work great with die cuts. I tend to just cut loads of them and play around when I'm creating a background. So once I had finished with the greens, I wanted to keep them to hand. You'll see I use them again later on. But that was my rolling hills. Now I used the reverse piece of that to mask off my hills so that my blues and my greens didn't blend in too much. And again, I grabbed a few different shades of blue. I also, you'll see here, mixed in an Oxide. I didn't have the Salty Ocean Distress ink, or maybe I do have it and I couldn't find it. But I then used the clouds in exactly the same way. So I started off with a really nice blue with that Salty Ocean, and then I decided to use the Ice Spruce and that slightly darker shade there of Hickory Smoke. So then I just kept moving down. Every time I started with that blue, and then I added a little bit of those grey tones because I wanted it to look like a stormy, rainy sort of day. I still wanted that blue to be breaking through as though the clouds are trying really hard, but at the same time it did have that sort of thundery feel to it, and I think I really did get that. When you see the end effect, I think it really looks like that rainy day. We had one of those here recently where the blue was trying really hard to come through, but those stormy skies were just really quite strong. So when you get to the bottom, it works really well to use that reverse part of the hillside to again do that same thing and match the horizons in. Now you'll see when I pull mine back, I have a little bit of white, so I just moved it down just a tiny bit, but it actually blends in really well. It almost looks as though that horizon is just blending in perfectly. And I kept these colours to hand because I kept just dabbing in once I'd done small colouring and added raindrops and things, and you'll see I just keep going going back and adding that little bit more. And I really like blending with those Barber's brushes for that reason, because I can get exactly the right amount of colour. And so then I decided I needed to go back and amend some more bits and pieces. Now, the first thing I did was apply a second coat of that Curiana pen, and I just felt it didn't have that punch. So when I stopped filming, I grabbed my snow marker, and I'd already put some on there, and what it does is when you put your heat tool on there, it puffs up, and it really did look like those sort of moldy, fun white pieces you see in storybooks, and you can see there how fun they look, and we've got some great close-up pictures for you at the end. So then I worked out where I wanted my mushroom to go, and I grabbed a couple more shades of green. Again, I will put all of those in the description below for you. And what you want to do for grass is lay your nib on its side and flick up, and you will find you get the best grass effect ever. It's a super simple technique, and I did it around the toadstool first of all, so that first of all I have that green on the toadstool, and then it gives me an idea of where I want those longer and shorter pieces to be on my hilly background. So I start again with the lighter shade, then the mid-tone, then the darker one, and then I keep going back in. I also chose a more olivey sort of green as well, just to add a few highlights in there. I really wanted it to look like it was growing out of a bit of a grassy knoll. I also made sure that the mushroom just fits halfway on that horizon as well. So because I'd cut it out the background, I needed to add in those raindrops. So again, I've added in those with the same shades of blue, and I'm doing exactly the same as I did with the grass. I laid that nib on its side, and these are just much shorter flicks. And I'll add some 3D elements to those later, but I really think it looks like that stormy sky is thundering down. Now, I did feel these were quite harsh against those soft backgrounds I'd created, so I went in with my Barber's brushes with the blue, and I do the same in a minute with the green, just to soften up how they come out, and I think that almost just helps it blend in. And so you can see there, I also decided to extend my grassy knoll out a little bit more to the edges. I felt it just didn't quite sit right, but some longer and shorter blades of grass going right down to the bottom blend in perfectly. And again, you'll see in a second, I've got the colourless blender, so that I just take some of that harshness off, and I took even more off just adding that little bit of green that was left on the brush. Didn't add any more ink, just used what was already there. And then I decided that that wasn't enough, so then you can see how I went in and added that little bit more. But this is the beauty of using these tools, if we have full control over it. If it hadn't come out so well, I could go back in with a lighter shade and I could colour, and I could even add even more distress ink, and I could really take it back to just those hilly sides as well. But when you see how the card comes together, I think we got the perfect harmony in the end as well. So just build it up very slowly, keep doing it in stages. Sometimes I walk away and come back to it. So now we're ready to mount up our card. I have half a piece of Nina Solar White, exactly the same as I coloured and created the background on. I'm using a piece of the green Lawn Fawn cardstock out of the rainbow pack. Again, all those names and links and things will be in the description for you. That's cut down to 5 1/4 by 4. My scenery piece is 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'm gluing everything together with some Tonic Funky tape. This is my absolute favourite tape runner. You'll have seen me use it a lot. I'm going to use some Big Mama foam on my snail, and I'm going to cut down some custom pieces to make it fit perfectly. And I'm also going to snip some of these pieces so that I have it on 2 layers. I really wanted it to have that extra element. I think it really needed to pop up, and that just worked perfectly on there. Now, if like me you want to rearrange it, just give it a little twist, you'll find it comes off a lot easier than trying to just yank it off, and you won't end up with any damage to your base layer. So I had some issues with my glossy accents. It was all gummed up, and then I cut a slit in it, so I ended up just trimming off the nib because that worked better. That's why I much prefer the smaller bottles, and you'll generally find I link up a smaller bottle rather than a big bottle. And I also always try it on the back of my hand before I end up with a big splodge on my card. So the first place I put it was all over the snail's shell, and we have those pictures for you coming up in just a moment. Then I decided I needed to do the rain, so I did exactly the same thing. I did a dot and a flick. Now I actually did my rain the wrong way up. It should be a flick up rather than a flick down. My rain, I'm saying, is anti-gravity. So I also did a couple of droplets on the leaves. You can see there how it is, that's still wet, but now we have some pictures coming up where you can see how it has dried. And I have to say, and I keep saying it in this tutorial, this really is one of my new favorite cards. Here you can see how cool those little white patches come up with the snow marker. Then we have that top-down view for you as well. Of course, all these pictures are on the blog. I also have a close-up picture of that grass. You can see how it's lay and flick. Just practice, 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 and trust me, your grass will come out the same way. Just lay and flick up. Here's my rain, so that's just flickers down, and again, you want to do the same flick up with your glossy accents, not down. Here's how the leaf comes out with those droplets on it. I think it really does look like it's about to just drop down onto his head. Isn't that a cute card? So thank you so much for stopping by today. Do click that subscribe button if you don't already subscribe to our channel. I hope to see you again very soon. Happy stamping and happy colouring. Bye!